Stop what you're doing and pay attention, because Netflix has officially gone full-on lunatic with The Witcher, and I don't care who you are. This is a disaster of cosmic proportions. Remember when we were all excited for Geralt of Rivia to stride onto our screens, swords in hand, world-saving and monster-slaying because this was supposed to be a dark fantasy masterpiece? Yeah, that dream is officially dead, cremated, and then ground into dust by a series of creative decisions so baffling that you start questioning whether the people running this show actually understand what a story is. Season 4 is here, and it's not a return to glory. It's a funeral parade, a celebration of failure, and somehow Netflix expects us to cheer. The Witcher isn't a show anymore. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when greed, incompetence, and self-important ideologues collide in a blender with a multi-million-dollar budget. So, buckle up, because we're about to dissect the corpse that Netflix calls entertainment, and by the end of this, you'll understand why nobody sane, is watching this garbage anymore. Let's start at the beginning, or at least the last time The Witcher actually mattered. Season 1, remember that? A chaotic mix of time jumps that made your head spin, half-hearted attempts at edgy storytelling, and a Geralt who somehow felt less present than a background NPC. And yet, we clung to hope because Henry Cavill was actually a fan, and for the first time in forever, it felt like someone on set understood the source material. Fast forward a few years, and Cavill's gone. Poof! Disappeared, leaving a hollow shell where a lead actor should be. And with him went every shred of credibility, every ounce of fan loyalty, every iota of goodwill that Netflix had been desperately trying to squander slowly over 3 excruciating seasons. Season 4 isn't a revival. It's a corpse parade, a mockery of what could have been. The show has fully transformed into the Yennefer and Ciri-centric drama that no one asked for, and Geralt, the supposed hero, has been shoved into the background, a cameo in his own story. And don't get me started on Blood Origin. Oh yes, that little abortion of a spin-off. A show so monumentally bad it redefined the word pain for anyone who tried to endure it. Plot holes the size of craters, dialogue that reads like it was written during a caffeine withdrawal, and action sequences that would embarrass a high school theater club. It wasn't just bad, it was a violation against the very concept of dark fantasy storytelling. And here's the thing, Netflix isn't making this show for us. It's not for the fans of the books, the games, or even the people who managed to slog through the previous seasons. This show exists for an audience that doesn't exist. The creative team? A collection of activists, millennial ideologues, and people who apparently mistook a fantasy epic for a platform for progressive messaging. Every decision screams, "We know better than the fans, we know better than the source material, we know better than the actor who actually cares about this world." The result? A mishmash of recycled tropes, hollow character arcs, and a narrative that hops around like a caffeine-addled rabbit on fire. Henry Cavill was the last safeguard. The man knew the lore inside out, he cared deeply about the material, and he constantly tried to steer the show away from utter catastrophe. And how did the Netflix overlords respond? By labeling him a problem, treating him like a toxic gamer bro because he had the audacity to care about the story. By season 3, he left. And if you thought that was a warning, congratulations. You're officially ignoring a red flag the size of a meteor. His departure wasn't a loss to Netflix. It was a liberation. For him, for the fans who still had taste, and for anyone with half a brain. Because at that point, being in The Witcher was no longer a privilege, it was a humiliation ritual performed in front of a billion-dollar stage, and the showrunners cheered while the audience cringed. So now we're here, Season 4. A show stripped of its champion, stripped of narrative coherence, stripped of the very thing that made the Witcher world compelling in the first place, and yet Netflix is doubling down, spending millions to produce a product that is, objectively, worse than the last season, and somehow still hoping people will watch. The Witcher is dead. The corpse is on display. And if you're still tuned in, congratulations. You've officially signed up for a masterclass in disappointment, frustration, and corporate hubris. And here's where it gets truly maddening, because it's not just about losing Cavill or bungling Geralt's story. It's the writing, the decisions, the sheer, unadulterated incompetence that has been festering since day one. Remember how a show should have characters you care about, conflicts that feel earned, and stakes that actually matter? Yeah, apparently Netflix decided that was too much work. Instead, we got a parade of interchangeable, overly coddled, blandly progressive characters whose arcs exist solely to stroke some ideological agenda, while the actual story, the adventure, the monsters, the political intrigue that made the books a living, breathing dark fantasy universe, is shoved into a dusty corner and forgotten. Every episode now feels like a therapy session with wizards and elves. Let's talk about feelings! Oh no, Ciri has trauma. Yennefer is angry, but in a powerful feminist way. Meanwhile, the lands of the continent, which should feel dangerous, chaotic, and alive, resemble a sanitized theme park where nothing truly matters and no one ever dies in a way that shocks you. Netflix apparently thinks this is what fans want. Let that sink in. They believe we want lecture-style dialogue masquerading as plot, character interactions that exist solely to showcase virtue signaling, and a leading duo who constantly hog the spotlight while our titular Witcher has become a glorified background decoration. Remember how Geralt was supposed to be the anchor, the morally complex anti-hero navigating a world of monsters, politics, and dark magic? Yeah, that guy is now basically a side note, quietly brooding in the corner while Yennefer and Ciri perform their monologues about identity, power, and destiny. It's tragic, but also hilarious if you appreciate the absurd. You could make a drinking game out of it, one sip every time someone mentions power or freedom in a way that has zero narrative consequence, and you'd be dead by episode 3. And don't get me started on Blood Origin. Oh, you thought it was a spin-off? Cute. That steaming pile of creative diarrhea was supposed to expand the Witcher universe and give us lore, backstory, and some actual excitement. What it gave us instead was a tone-deaf, plotless, incoherent mess with characters so thinly drawn that I suspect they were generated by a random name generator and personality spreadsheet. Every scene was a masterclass in how to make your audience want to gouge their eyes out. And yet, Netflix poured more money into this disaster than most people will ever see in a lifetime. That's right. Hundreds of millions of dollars spent on utter nonsense. And why? Because someone somewhere decided that this was what audiences wanted. No, this is what people with too much money and too little taste wanted, and we're all just stuck watching the consequences like an unwilling participant in a train wreck slow-motion montage. Let's talk about fan reaction, or more accurately, the lack thereof. People abandoned this show in droves when the first cracks started appearing. By the time Cavill left, the remaining audience was clinging on out of morbid curiosity or nostalgia, hoping maybe, just maybe, Netflix would course correct. Spoiler, they didn't. Every trailer, every teaser for Season 4 screams the same message. We do not care what you want, what you like, or what the books say. We do not care about coherence, logic, or satisfying payoffs. All that matters is the spectacle of the characters, the shallow ideological beats, and the illusion of high stakes. The showrunners are practically waving a banner that reads, "We are aware this is terrible, and we intend to make it worse." And somehow, people are still tuning in, either out of blind loyalty, masochistic tendencies, or the sheer compulsion to witness human hubris unfold on a multi-million-dollar stage. The irony is that there was a world where this could have been different. A world where The Witcher adapted the books with respect, where the lead actor actually mattered, where writers gave a damn about crafting tension, politics, and adventure instead of rewriting Geralt as a sidekick for a progressive morality play. But that world is gone, vaporized by a combination of corporate greed, creative incompetence, and the relentless pursuit of an audience that does not exist. Instead, we're left with this grotesque shadow of what could have been. A show that has no respect for its source, no respect for its fans, and almost certainly no respect for itself. And yet, Netflix continues to throw money at it, as if spending more can buy back the credibility that was lost when Cavill left and Blood Origin happened, which is laughably naive. The Witcher at this point is like a zombie wandering the continent. Animated, moving, making noise, but fundamentally dead inside. So what does Season 4 even offer? A bunch of recycled ideas, a new leading actor who is, let's face it, a pale imitation of the man who actually gave a damn, and storylines that feel like they were written by a committee of people who've never held a sword or read a fantasy novel outside of a BuzzFeed article. Netflix has clearly decided that the show is bigger than any one person or story, which is true, but not in the way they think. The show is now an endless, hollow franchise, existing solely to bleed money and inflict disappointment on anyone foolish enough to click play. The Witcher is dead, and if you're still here, congratulations. You're now a witness to the funeral of what might have been the greatest dark fantasy show of this decade, killed by its own creators, chewed up by ideology, and left to rot in the public eye. Now, let's talk about the characters, or, more accurately, the shells of characters that the writers insist on calling people. Geralt is gone, Cavill is gone, and what's left is a hollow imitation of the brooding, complex anti-hero we actually cared about. Ciri and Yennefer dominate every scene, yes, but it's not empowerment, it's overkill. Overwritten, overexposed, and underwhelming. Every conversation is a lecture. Every decision is symbolic. Every battle is either CGI chaos or a slow-motion slog that tries way too hard to look epic while delivering zero emotional punch. The writing team clearly believes that layering on feminist platitudes and pseudo-deep philosophical musings somehow substitutes for actual storytelling. But here's a newsflash. It doesn't. It never will. Meanwhile, Geralt, the man who should be driving the narrative, is treated like a prop, an accessory. A living meme who broods dramatically in the background while the real heroes pontificate about destiny, trauma, and identity. It's tragic, it's insulting, and it's pure Netflix hubris on display. And then there's the pacing, or lack thereof. Season 4 is a frantic, incoherent mess, jumping from scene to scene with the narrative elegance of a toddler on a sugar high. 1 minute you're in some sprawling, desolate wilderness, the next you're at a conveniently multicultural village that exists solely to check off diversity boxes. You can never tell where you are, who's important, or why anyone is doing anything. The show once prided itself on world building, now it's a series of interchangeable backdrops, with stakes that feel like they exist only on paper. Every fight sequence is either over-choreographed nonsense or awkwardly cut, leaving you wondering if the directors even watched the footage themselves. And let's not forget the dialogue. Oh, the dialogue. Characters spout motivational aphorisms, feminist monologues, and deep exposition that feels like it was ripped from a middle school philosophy essay. The result? A show that's exhausting, irritating, and completely devoid of the dark, dangerous atmosphere that made the Witcher universe compelling in the first place. But here's the kicker. Netflix keeps insisting this is what audiences want. They are completely divorced from reality. The executives probably sit in their shiny offices, nodding at charts and focus groups, thinking, yes, this is peak fantasy entertainment. Meanwhile, the rest of us, actual fans, people who have read the books, played the games, and understand what makes this world thrilling, are left staring at the screen, screaming into the void, asking how a once promising property could be decimated so spectacularly. The Witcher isn't just bad now, it's actively offensive to anyone who cares about coherent storytelling. It's a masterclass in how not to adapt a beloved franchise, a cautionary tale of what happens when corporate greed, ideology, and incompetence collide on a massive scale. Even the supposedly exciting moments feel hollow. Big reveals are telegraphed 10 episodes in advance. Dramatic confrontations are ruined by clumsy exposition. Emotional beats are undermined by cartoonish acting or ridiculous CGI that makes you wonder if the budget was allocated to digital sparkles instead of competent direction. It's like Netflix took every fantasy trope, shook it up in a blender, and then poured it back into the show, hoping we wouldn't notice the pulp of coherence, logic, and fun was gone. And yet, despite all this, people still tune in. Not because they want to. They do it out of morbid curiosity, to witness train wrecks unfold live, to marvel at how a $100 million production can collapse under its own weight so consistently. Let's not forget the lore, the very backbone of the Witcher universe. Once rich, layered, and compelling, the lore has been butchered, simplified, and sanitized to fit a modern, politically safe narrative that has nothing to do with the books. Monsters, magic, and politics, all the elements that made the original world gripping, are now either sidelined or dumbed down into predictable plot devices. The Witcher world should feel alive, dangerous, and morally complex. Season 4. It's a brightly lit theme park ride where every corner is sanitized, every threat is muted, and every moral choice is telegraphed and acceptable by modern standards. The soul of the continent has been stripped away, replaced with a hollow mannequin of a fantasy world adorned with platitudes, lecture-style monologues, and the occasional CGI explosion to keep the audience from noticing the decay. So here we are, at the end of the line, staring at the carcass that is The Witcher Season 4, wondering how we got here, and more importantly, why anyone is still pretending this is entertainment. The show that was once a promising dark fantasy epic has been reduced to a shallow, ideologically driven, CGI-laden mess that insults fans, wastes talent, and actively undermines its own source material. Every creative decision is either baffling or offensive to anyone with a shred of common sense or respect for storytelling. It's not just bad, it's a monument to hubris, a monument to greed, and a monument to the idea that money can buy quality even when talent, coherence, and basic narrative logic are completely absent. Season 4 promises excitement, adventure, and suspense, but delivers none of it. Geralt is a background character in his own saga. Ciri and Yennefer dominate, but it's not empowerment. It's narrative inflation. Every plot twist is telegraphed. Every dramatic moment is hollow. Every battle is either an overlong CGI-heavy mess or a poorly staged dud. And Netflix? They keep throwing money at it like it will somehow make sense, like a $100 million Band-Aid over a hemorrhaging corpse of creativity. They've completely forgotten why anyone fell in love with The Witcher in the first place. It wasn't the lectures, the activism, or the race-swapped extras. It was the danger, the tension, the moral complexity, the adventure, and yes, Geralt himself. Strip all that away, and you're left with nothing but a hollow spectacle that pretends to matter while accomplishing absolutely nothing. Even the audience reaction, or lack thereof, is telling. The fans fled long ago, abandoning the show the moment Cavill left, or the writing became unbearable. The remaining viewers are either masochists, casual passers-by hoping for nostalgia, or people trying to understand just how spectacularly a franchise can self-destruct. And the more Netflix doubles down, the more obvious it becomes that they don't care. They don't care about coherence, fidelity to the source, or even basic entertainment value. What matters is optics, ideology, and pretending that billions of dollars can paper over the fact that they've lost the heart, soul, and integrity of this universe. There was a world where The Witcher could have been legendary, a dark, violent, intelligent, gripping fantasy series that captured hearts, minds, and imagination. A world where the continent felt real, dangerous, and morally complex, where monsters were terrifying, politics were tense, and Geralt was the hero we deserved. That world is gone. Replaced by a version of The Witcher that panders, lectures, and stagnates, a show that exists to waste time and money while quietly eroding fan goodwill with every frame. Netflix has killed The Witcher, and nobody, apparently, cares enough to stop them. So, if you're still watching, or even considering it, take a step back. Remember what this show once could have been. Remember Henry Cavill, the lore, the danger, the stakes, and then realize the bitter truth. The Witcher is dead. Season 4 is not a resurrection, it's a funeral. A cautionary tale about corporate greed, creative incompetence, and the slow, painful dismemberment of a beloved franchise. Watch if you must, but don't say you weren't warned. The adventure is gone, the hero is gone, and the world that once thrilled us is nothing but dust. The Witcher is dead, and Netflix, in all its wisdom, just keeps pouring gasoline on the corpse.